Hello, good morning. Today we're going to discuss data collection and presentation. Just to continue the different ways of data gathering, we're now going to have a more active data collection, which is the interview. For the interview, we have different types of interviews. We have the in-person interview. For the in-person interview, it can be a face-to-face question and answer. Uh, it can be via other meetings, but basically this is just a one-person face-to-face question and answer. So the advantage would be excellent response rates, enables you to conduct interviews that takes longer amount of time, and follow-up questions to responses that are not clear. So the main advantage of this is if if your questionnaire is not that perfect, um, you can ask the question to your interviewee, and if you are not going to extract the expected answer, you can have your follow-up questions. But the main disadvantage is it is expensive and it requires a lot of time. And access to some areas of the population, such as neighborhoods prone to crime, cannot be accessed, which may result in biases. So another type of interviewing is the telephone interviewing. So this is one way of data gathering, like the one they are doing in radio stations. What's your favorite music, the top 10 hit chart, and so on. Advantage would be a quick collection of data, cheaper than in-person interviewing, but the disadvantage is since you're not seeing your respondents, you're not the response or the trustworthiness of your respondents is not that reliable, and the limited amount of time that the data can be collected over the phone interview. Another one would be online interviewing. So this is somewhat like online polls. So this is somewhat what you're usually going to do. You're going to post survey questions and then you're going to ask for their replies. Advantage, low cost, and anonymous. So since the responses are anonymous, um, it gives confidence to sensitive topics like sex issues, like crimes. So you can ask questions and have um, a more true answer, a more real answer if you're going to have anonymous surveys. But the problem with this is we are not sure whether we are really getting the exact representation of your population. And you can't go back to your respondents because since they answered the survey online, you can't get back to the individual. So that's the one downfall of being anonymous. So you can't have a clarification. Now we also have mailed questionnaire. This is obtaining information that respondents may be unwilling to give when interviewing in person. So the disadvantage is low response rate and delay or lost mail. This is somewhat being used if you want a reliable answers, but the problem with this one is this low response rate. So this is quite reliable because it requires effort for you to gather the data. The respondents um, submit their answers. So we are sure that they are willing respondents to your survey. And then Another disadvantage is the delays or the loss of mail. So another disadvantage is the low literacy may inhibit clarification in the responses. Now another one, focus groups. So focus group discussion is a small group of interviewing. Um, you're going to group a small group of 6 to 10 persons would brainstorm, and a certain moderator ask questions to each one of the respondents, and then they would be giving their insights individually. The advantage is fewer responses. Fewer responses means fewer resources and time, and you can have backup questions which clarifies the problem. The disadvantage is the sample might not really be representing the population, and if you have a representative or if you have a respondent or a member of the focus group who has a strong personality, he might dominate the conversation. So dominant participants can influence the responses of the others. Another one is the observational data collection method. So for interviewing, on the first one, on the interviewing, the interaction is there is an interaction between you as the researcher or the data gatherer and the respondent. But for the observational data collection method, you actively participate in the data gathering procedure and make sure that the subjects or the respondents or the 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 sample you're taking does not know or does not is not affected by your presence. So you observe, and they should not be affected with your presence. So that's for the observational data collection method. So we can have cross-sectional observational design method. When you say cross-sectional, so take note, they don't, the respondents do not know that you're there, or um, even if they know that you're not there, they are not affected by your presence. So cross-sectional is one-time observation. So you collect data on observed relationship once. It is cheaper and taking less times versus case control and cohort. So the disadvantage is the time is being disregarded. So the time factor, because you're just going to observe at one time, so the time factor is being disregarded in the cross-sectional design. For case control, so you divide it into case group and control group. So in a case control group or a case control data collection process, the researcher creates cases and controls and observes them. A case has been exposed to a phenomenon, while the control has not. So after identifying the case and the controls, so the researcher moves back in time to to observe how your event of interest occurs in the two groups. So there you have two groups. The first group has been administered, or sorry, it's not administered. They have experienced one thing, and then the other group does not experience the other thing. They are not aware that they are being compared, but one group experience um, a phenomena, the other group does not, and you immerse yourself in the process and observe what happens. So after identifying the cases and the controls, the researcher moves back in time to observe how your event of interest occurs in the two groups. This is why case control studies are referred as retrospective. So it's not really causal, but um, the main variable that changes the two groups would be the cause or the factor that you consider. Why are they the same or why are they different? For example, a medical researcher suspects a certain type of cosmetic is causing skin cancer. So what you're going to do is to take populations of two groups. One would be taking the certain type of cosmetic and the other one uh, using the other. So what you're going to do is to check whether there is a difference between these two groups, the case and the control. So you request participants to remember the type of cosmetic and the frequency of its use. Advantage, cheaper. Then it is cheaper than the cohort, but less time. Disadvantage, it relies on biases on the memory of the respondents because this is a data gathering process. So for the third observational data collection method, we have the cohort. So first, again, is a cross-sectional. The second one is case control. So the third one is cohort, all C's. So for cohort, the researcher follows people with similar characteristics over a period. So this type of design takes time. So you follow the growth of one product. So say for example, you want to check how plants behave over time or how it grows over time. So it is a cohort. Uh, So advantage would be collecting a data occurrence that happened over a long period of time. Disadvantage, it's costly and requiring more time, not advisable for events happening rarely. Next is ecological. So ecological is when researchers are more interested in studying a population instead of individuals. Example, say you are interested in lung cancer rates in Manila and Cebu. You obtain a number of cancer cases per 1,000 people for each city and compare them. So you can then hypothesize the possible causes of difference between the two cities. So being brought about by the cancer rates at Manila and Cebu, you're going to observe what happens based on their surroundings. Advantage, it saves times and money because of the data is already available. Disadvantage, it may lead to infer population relationships that does not exist. So that's all for interview and observational data collection methods. The next one would be the experimental design.